G'day, this is Flat Tank Journey and I'm Chris. If you've been following along, and some of you have, lost a few subscribers while I've been away, and that's cool, no drama. But gained a lot of subscribers. I was really pleased. So we're in the mid 500s, which isn't too bad. Thanks for hanging around. As I explained in the last video, got some family health issues with one of my children. But let's push on. The BSA engine. Now I've had the engine about 5 or 6 weeks. Yeah, something like that. And it's complete, ready to go. Refreshed magneto, rebuilt magneto, timed, ready to put in the bike, oil, pop. And away it should go. Needs an advance and retard cable, but it doesn't need much else. So it was a saga. It was a big saga to get the engine done. I don't really build engines myself. I don't really have the confidence or the skill set. This took about 4 engines to get this together. And I actually thought I had a lot of stuff, and I thought a lot of it was in good nick. But really, truthfully, some of it wasn't. And the big issue was one of these oil pumps or oil sight feed bowls that measures the oil into the engine. I think we destroyed 2 of them in an effort to get one. And in the end, got one. They snap off just here. Let's come in, have a look at this engine, and then I'm going to do something about putting it in the bike. Bike's not going to run. We're not that close. Have a look at the engine though. It looks cool. Rightio. Let's hope this works out well for you. Now, it's got new valve springs. They're obvious. New, the little collet things at the bottom. And lots of other new parts, lots of new hardware that were made, and I got off Gary, who sold me the project bike. It has a rebuilt oil sight feed bowl and pump and measuring device. Now the reality is this is actually 2 of them joined together by someone who knows better than me. And we've solved the break apart problem. They're made of pot metal and they break. Now I do have a bronze one somewhere that's complete, but you know, you destroyed 2 of them broke in half. The metal's just that fragile, and there's a weak spot. Once you tighten this up, there's a recess underneath, and it just pops the 2 apart. So that's a bit of a shame. Anyway, we have the oil tubes all done up. They're all taped off. We have the elusive, or what I thought used to be elusive, correct tap in the back there, and that's super. It's ready for the oil pipes. As I said, we've got new guides, new springs. The tappets have been done, stellited, measured, and timed. The timing gear's all correct, and I'm not pulling it apart, just not going there. That's not going to happen. We've got new washers in the top. We've got nice brass plugs that were scavenged from 2 or 3 engines. But it looks really good. Or the other thing, we've got the decompression lever. Now, they're always missing. I've got about 6 or 7 engines, and the damn decompression lever is always gone. So that's the only one I had. Bit of a shame. Let's turn this thing around and we'll have a look at the other side. Not super interesting or anything, but we've got a breather, rebuilt magneto, and I believe it to be the correct magneto for the year. And you can see the engine builder has put timing marks on it in white paint and has timed the engine correctly. The cush drive was the best of the drives that we had, and I've got, you know, I might have 8 or 9. And then these are for mounting the primary chain cover off. And we've got some thoughts about that, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. The engine's all plugged up. It all looks good. I'm going to see if I can get it in the bike, and then I might bring you back. At this stage, here's the bike. The bike's very dusty, very dirty. It's been sitting in the other shed. I've got to get the engine out, prop the bike up, and get the new engine in. So we'll see how we go. I might lose the gear change lever and take that off and then see where we go from there. The worst part about dry building is you've got to disassemble everything eventually. The dummy cases came out no trouble at all, and I pulled the gearbox. Now, two reasons I pulled the gearbox. One, it's going to make life easier. And the second is I remembered I've had the front cover off this for an inspection and it looked all right, but I never built a gasket. So I need to disassemble, get some gasket goo, or build the gasket, or do something about sealing that back up. And I'll do that before it goes back in. All right, I've been knocking some dust off as well. The engine, well, it wasn't a huge job to get in. I used some cribbing boards underneath, gradually picking the engine up as I went. Got a back bolt in, got two back bolts in, and got a third. So the bolts actually are here, and one tucked in here that you push in from the other side. And of course, it's easier to put in without the gearbox in it, because you don't have the clutch prohibiting one of the bolts from coming out from that side. Come and have a look, and then we'll sit down and have a talk about the issues, what's yet to come, and how much more have I got to get this to go. Engine in the frame, and look, the thing looks kind of cool. I'd have to say, I'm really pleased with how it sits in the frame. I suppose it should. It's meant to be there. But it bolts in. 1, 2, and 3 is tucked in there. Bit of a pain to get to on this side, but it works out pretty well. Other side, same but different, isn't it? Not rocket science. This side's nice and clean without any of the covers on or anything like that. Let's talk about the issues now, and there's lots. So one of the big issues for me is still the front wheel. Now, for those of you who've been watching since the beginning, it's an incorrect front hub. I couldn't actually get a correct front wheel to go in it. I've got one, but it didn't work. So go back and have a look and catch up. So I've got to do something about front brakes. Now, it should have a rod that runs from here to here. But I have the rod, but I have a different brake hub. I have Bantam brake pads, and I have a whole range of things why that's not going to work. So on my 27, my other 27, the 500, I built a ferrule to go in here, which would operate a cable, and the cable should shoot past, but it doesn't. Wonder if there should have been a hole in there. Probably. We need to build something that goes from there to either here and run that backwards, pulling up, or from the front, pulling back. Don't know, because it's not on a good angle. What am I going to do about it? I'm not sure. I've got a little bit of slop in the head bearings, and I don't know why. Perhaps they're just not tight enough. I can move the cup. So I'm figuring everything needs knocked down a little bit. That's not too difficult. The tank. Now, the tank's in good nick, but I need an oil plug, tap, something, and I need a fuel tap. And I haven't got either of them, so I need to do something about that. I need to do something about the final oil fittings. Now, Les tells me this one feeds into there. I believe that to be correct, but am I sure? No, actually, that's not right. This one goes into here. That's the metering tap, and this goes somewhere else, and I forget where. I've got to sort out the decompression lever, but I've got a cable adjuster, and I've got the fitting, and I've got the lever. Not a big deal. Carburetor, and we'll have a look at what I've got before we wind the episode up. I've got to straighten up the footrests, not a huge job. And then we've got the other side of the bike. So let's have a look at that. Let's chime into this side. I've got a spark plug lead that isn't long enough. I've got to get a advance and retard cable. I've got to finish up the clutch and get the clutch actuation sorted out and sort out the footrest so it doesn't slide backwards and forwards on this side. I've got a rear sprocket to sort out. Now I've got a really worn one and I've got one to reband. I think I'm going to take it to someone to reband. I'll show you in a minute, eh? In here, now I have plenty of the pieces that hold the primary chain cover onto the bike, and that's not an issue. However, this has got a 175 Honda XL175 piston in it, 1 mil oversize, has the right gudgeon pin height, and fitted the bore at 66 millimeters. The bore needed a little bit of a hone to get it to fit. Actually needed a lot of a hone. It was a faff. It really had to mess around with it. Now I'm going to get a bit nerdy, and I'm not really a nerd. This piston has the oil scavenge ring on it. And somebody asked the question originally when I talked about it. So these were made, these old oil drippers, as my brother calls them, were made to just burn the oil off. Nobody cared. Didn't matter if it spat onto the road or what it did. Nobody gave a fiddler's about it. So there was no oil scavenging. It's a later thing. So the engine builders elected to leave the oil scavenging on, but has suggested that I have an overflow or some sort of leveler in the crankcase. Now, his suggestion was in one of these holes, make a new one of these that is hollow with a copper tube coming out of it, out the side. Now, in reality, it could be that thick, which is about half an inch all the way up, and you'd never see it. So you could drill out the inside, drill a hole from the side in some hex bar, and sweat in a tube. I suppose you drop crankcase pressure, but he said, you know, it would give you some chance of oil not building up to a ridiculous level as it constantly feeds in, but it doesn't burn off at the same speed that it used to. So I need to think about that and decide that. His suggestion is to do that rather than to remove the oil scavenge ring off the piston. It's not a big deal if you want it off. Studs off, lift it, take the ring off and let it burn oil to its heart's content. He thinks it'd be better to build with an overflow pipe of some description. Give us your opinion on that, will you? If you're one of the engine nerds that are out there, tell me what you think of, you know, an overflow. It's already got a breather here, so I suppose it's not a big issue. About putting a breather here that lets oil come out at, you know, that level. Let me know what you think. Anyway, I've got to do something about that. So here's the fuel, here's the oil, and I've got to get that sorted. Of course, I've got to get chains. Not a big deal, but I've got to get them too. It really is a bit nerdy today, and today's episode feels like a lot of detail and not enough substance. But nevertheless, there's the rear sprocket off the bike, and it is well flogged out. Now, I got given this with the bike, with the project, and I believe it to be correct. So I'm going to get these cut off and this machined out and that sweated onto that. I don't think it's a job I can do. I really don't. I've tried a few stupid things in my life, but I think that's kind of beyond me, and I'm going to take it to someone else and pay the right money and get the right job done, and perhaps I won't be sorry. So that's got to get done, and I've got to get someone to do it. Cush drives galore. So I ended up with several. Some have been rebanded, some have got new teeth, some are in good nick, and some are probably not, but I ended up with a few of them. As I said, I think the engine took something like, you know, parts from 4 or 5 other engines to get that done. Now, here's the oil pump that causes problems for just about everybody. I don't think I know anybody that doesn't lament the use of these things. I can't find the full one. This is part of one. There's a chunk missing off here. Inevitably, it's stuck inside the chain case and you can't get it out. Inside the timing gear case, and you can't get it out. And you destroy the case and you destroy what's left of this. Allegedly, this one is still savable by Les. He machines this off, builds a complete new bottom, and then drills and pins it all back together. And is very confident in his work. They are tremendously expensive to buy reproduction ones, about 400 Aussie dollars, something like that, 250 euros. Anyway, people never want to pay for them, but I've got one here somewhere. I just did. I've also got a heap of spare parts for them, so I could constantly look at them and work out what was what. Turns out there's a few different models with a few different bits and pieces on them, and they do different things at different times. But there it is. Pardon me. The next thing was carburetors. So, I have some. Well, I have one and a bit. I emphasise a bit. I believe this one is nearly complete and may be good enough to use. So I've scavenged parts out of multiple carburetors to get this one together. This has been through one of those fancy, you know, vibrating electro something cleaners numerous times. It's got all the knobs and all the fittings on it, and I'll show you. Now this is all just loosely assembled, but this is the complete one. And it is complete with, you know, original fittings. I had most of it. Some of it came off a spare one that I got, and I forget I had part of a carburetor with it, and then I got more carby parts with it when I bought an engine. And there's jets and fittings and slides and all sorts of bits and pieces. I believe I actually have another one or two somewhere. That might be at my other place, but that's what I think the carburetor looks like. Little carb, and I hope it doesn't cause me a lot of trouble. There you go. This is real life, and this is what happens. The BSA got put away because something more important popped up, and that's one of my children. They're the most important thing in the world to me. So the benefit of old bikes is you throw a sheet over them and you walk away from them for a while, and they don't even miss you. The bike didn't even know I was gone. The engine is back and it's super. It cost really serious money. It took a long time and there was lots of faffing about to get it as good as it is, and I think it's mint. I think it's really good. The Valicet, now I've put that aside. I actually, while my daughter was in hospital, I was on Facebook Marketplace trying to buy a second one to get some parts off. But that deal kind of fell through. I couldn't get contact with the bloke who had it through Marketplace, and he didn't respond efficiently and it didn't go well. So I don't have it. The Velo, it's going to go away for a little while, and the BSA is back in my line of focus. So I hope you stay with me. If you haven't already, hey, hit the subscribe button. It was very heartening to see nearly 20 people subscribe and only 4 or 5 unsubscribe. So that's really cool. Hang in there with me if you can. Cheers. Have a good one.